In 1891, Mark Twain, after a series of business failures, was desperate to cut his expenses. To economize, Twain moved his family from Hartford in Connecticut to a surprising place, the raw new city of Berlin. There were many astonishing things about the German capital that Twain called the Chicago of Europe. It was brash and booming, a place of clacking elevated trains and massive concrete apartment blocks, and relentless blaring light from hundreds of electric lampposts. And it was a city of something that existed really nowhere else in the world. Berlin was a city of gay bars. These were not places of fear, existing in the shadows, always under threat of police raids, exposure, or shame. Berlin's gay beer bars, cafes, and elaborate costume ball extravaganzas existed openly, with the approval of the police. They existed under the protection of authorities, thanks to the enlightened theories of Berlin's police commissioner. He had tried a punitive approach to regulating gay people in Berlin, jailed bar owners and arrested patrons, and had watched it fail, saw the backlash in public, cruising in the Tiergarten, in hustling and criminality and the blackmailing of Johns. So he allowed public gay life in Berlin, the flirting and gossip and talk of politics and art, the butchness, drag, and camp, to play out under the electric lights in rooms called the Mikado and Die Zauberflöte. Yes, really, the magic flute. As the police looked on in mostly silent watchfulness. It was the curiosity of the world. It was the creation of the modern notion of queer safe space. Refuge we stretched around ourselves like bubbles within the mostly hostile landscape of a place. It was the launching of a modern culture, a place where we flourished temporarily until war and the rise and fall of the Weimar Republic made the lights flicker and go out, and then even the darkened rooms to turn to rubble completely. But the idea, the hope of refuge could not be extinguished, not entirely, even though the darkness that took out the lights of the Mikado never really failed to lurk. Travel, for me, has long meant moving in a shadow world of queer safe space, the imperfect legacy of Berlin in Twain's time. It is a parallel zone to the sunny realm of official space. I have oriented myself in cities from the safety zones of gay-owned bed and breakfasts, apartment rentals via Mr. B&B, which is like Airbnb, but there's better moisturizer in the bathroom that you can borrow, and hotels catering to queers. I have read the flavor of places in its gay bars, pubs, and cantinas. I have taken the measure of countries in all-night eating spots in gayborhoods and soaked up the ambience in quiet lounges in queer enclaves and throbbing clubs where the crowds were mixed, but the force was amazing. And while integration with dominant society has animated one arm of queer struggle, the other seeks to guard queer culture, to keep it a zone free for a vast range of expression, even as it tries to shield LGBTQ plus people from violence. Even now, when so much of being gay can be public, the shadow world persists. One night in Hilton Head, South Carolina, at a weekend wedding for good friends, a straight couple, my husband and I snuck off to find the island's only gay bar. We scrambled over a wooden fence lit in a parking lot when the after reception party was winding down, My husband checking the location on Google Maps, face blue in the cast of his phone, trolling the shadows. We walked until we found it in an L-shaped mall, hidden by tall pines, sequestered from the road. There was a scattering of people at the bar. We watched the blonde kid bartender. After making a couple of vodka sodas, he stripped off his shirt, hopped on the bar, and go-go'd for the length of a track. When it ended, he jumped down, put his shirt back on, and poured drinks again. He was a one-boy gay bar in a one-bar town. Being there at the island edge of a southern state that felt like an enemy zone, to watch the conventions of every gay bar everywhere play out like a ritual. It felt as if we were participating in something as old as worship. We'd slipped behind the blank door in a strip mall, temporarily screened from risk, to see the oldest part of our identity affirmed to a Britney Spears remix. In the 1960s, at the pink dawn of gay lib, before the red fires of Stonewall, travel stories did a lot to establish the idea of universal queer experience, to construct the idea of a world without boundaries, a gay community, as if so variable and amorphous a thing as queerness could shrink to a particular way of living. The Guild Guide and Bob Dameron's address book lifted safe zones, bars and hotels, restaurants, and eventually cruising sites. Ciao, had a little exclamation point at the end. Ciao, an international gay travel magazine whose cheeky exclamation point didn't exactly suggest the danger of being a traveler out of the closet. It debuted in 1973 with a feature on gay and lesbian-friendly restaurants in Manhattan. These were the parallel zones of safety and acceptance gay travelers could navigate, charted by those publications 40 and 50 years ago, a Negro motorist green book for homosexuals. Last year, for the first Pride March after the 2016 murder of 49 people inside Pulse nightclub, I went to Orlando to pay my respects. Though there had been other murders in other bars in the decades since Stonewall, and we were a people defined as much by mourning as by love, Pulse was the place that shocked my community. It was the kind of place we had long thought of as safe, now forever breached. I went because I needed to pay my respects to the victims, but also, just as tragically, to the very idea of a protected zone, the notion of a refuge. The shadow zone, flashing with the lights reflected by the mirror facets of half a dozen disco balls twirling beneath a roof that failed to shelter us. The very men who writers like Twain, tourists to Berlin, might have seen in the Mikado or the Zauberflotte, could well have been the old men forced to wear the pink triangle in the camps after the German experiment with safe space was over. But a memory of the lights of the Mikado, of Pulse, of the strip mall bar in South Carolina where a single boy swung in his hips the whole weight of history and culture. Those shine in our hearts like hope. Thank you.